The first time I saw my husband, he was sitting at the bar at the Cherry Hill Hilton. The first thing I noticed about him was his hands, because he has beautiful hands, which is appropriate given that he's a writer, but I didn't know that at this point. He was nursing a beer, and I had a thirst for one, which is why I was looking at his hands. The reason I wasn't looking at his face is that I was at the Cherry Hill Hilton with my new boyfriend. The boyfriend I'd left my first husband for earlier in the year. So I had a lot invested in this relationship and therefore was not checking out anyone else, because hands don't count, right? Okay. Wex, this is real, this is Wex. Not Marilla and Michael, Rill and Wex. Not a single person that I hung out with at the Cherry Hill Hilton that week referred to him as Michael. There's like way too many Michaels on the Jewish music scene, so everybody calls themselves by their surnames, you know, Alpert, Winograd, Wex. I tried calling him Michael when we first got together, and I even experimented with Mike, and it just felt weird, because he was introduced to me as Wex, so Wex he remained. You've probably figured out by now that I'm not from round here, so the fact that Wex and I met at all was almost miraculous in its statistical and anthropological unlikelihood. The algorithms designed to pair up hopeful singles on internet dating sites would not have put us together in a million years. Wex grew up Orthodox Jewish in Alberta. I grew up grimly Protestant in Warwickshire. Wex learned to drive before I was born. I learned 9 years ago. Wex likes jazz. I'd rather listen to a colicky baby cry himself to sleep. The reason I was in that bar, in that hotel, on that day, in that year, was that the largest Jewish cultural festival in the world was being held there. So what the hell was I doing there? The journey to meet my husband started about a year earlier, when I was married to somebody entirely different. Nice enough chap, nothing wrong with him. Just not someone my mum would describe as giving me a run for my money. So a year into our marriage, I get a job at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre in Stratford-on-Avon. I'm playing various woodland and other creatures. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Little did I know that my marriage would fail in Narnia. It wasn't exactly Narnia. I didn't fall in love with Mr. Tumnus or even Mrs. Beaver. No, it was the musical director of the Cherry Orchard that was playing in the house next door that ultimately introduced me not only to adultery, but also to Jewish wedding music and my second husband in the bar at the Cherry Hill Hilton. So I left Narnia and my actor husband and ran away with my musician boyfriend to the seaside, which was leaving my guilt behind me and the anger of my friends. And I immersed myself in my new relationship, and I made new friends, and I discovered a whole new world of klezmer music. Then that summer, my new boyfriend had a proposition for me. What are you doing at Christmas? I don't know, hanging out with my family. Well, do you want to go to Klezkamp with me? I don't know, what's Klezkamp? It's 500 Jews in a kosher hotel in the Catskills. Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Well, it wasn't actually in the Catskills that year because the hotel had burned down in an incident that was later described to me as Jewish lightning. And the festival had been relocated to the Hilton in Cherry Hill in New Jersey. So after we were introduced to each other in the Cherry Hill Hilton, Wex and I bonded naturally over our shared love of the Carry On movies, which were apparently popular in his native Canada. Noting my rather prominent chest and dirty laugh, he wrote "Call me Babs" in Yiddish on my name tag. He said to me, "Do you have a sister at home?" And I was like, yeah, but she's got a boyfriend. And my brain was whirring like a spinning top, and I was like, does he like me? how does he like me? He's like a terrifying genius. He speaks like 11 languages. Like, why would he like me? Because Wex's reputation as one of the smartest go-to Jews on the Jewish language and culture scene preceded him. Little did I know that the internal monologue in his mind was going something like, she is out of your league, she is way out of your league. Our attraction, although unlikely because of the differences in our age and demographics, was mutual and very real, but neither of us acted on it because of the aforementioned boyfriend. When I wasn't laughing like a demented gibbon in Wex's classes on Yiddish idiom, only about 50% of which I actually understood, I spent that entire week at Klezkamp in the Cherry Hill Hilton looking like a deer in headlamps. The yelling levels alone were terrifying. I felt like I had this giant neon sign over my head that screamed Shiksa, and that every Jewish campus spidey senses were tingling because they could smell that I had once accepted Jeebus as my personal saviour. I actually ate cholent in a desperate attempt to pass. Cholent is a congealed bean stew that you generally eat on the Jewish Sabbath, and because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, it's generally been sitting on a hot plate for 18 to 24 hours before consumption. Unfortunately, eating the cholent didn't do me any favours. It just made me stand out more because none of the Jewish campers would touch it. But I did survive that first Klezkamp, and Wex and I saw each other again at one other Klezkamp and 2 Klezfest Londons, which he later confessed to me he only attended so that he could see me. We had a few email exchanges, and all the correspondence was completely appropriate given my relationship status, although I must confess I did experience extreme butterflies in my stomach one time when he actually responded to one of those stupid email questionnaires that I sent him, and revealed in the answer to 2 questions that not only did we share a favourite cartoon character, Pepe Le Pew, but we were also both of the opinion that Ringo was the best Beatle. So eventually, the klezmer-loving boyfriend dumped me on the pretext that I was shallow and trivial and we had nothing in common, which were qualities that Wex genuinely seemed to enjoy. I was surprisingly undevastated by the dumping. I spent only about a day and a half sobbing uncontrollably, and then I felt really guilty because I immediately started thinking about Wex. And I had spent 3 years studiously avoiding thinking about him in the boyfriend context, so suddenly all these thoughts just crashed down on top of my head. But my guilt was totally misplaced, it turned out, because I found out a couple of months after that Klezmer Boy, on his frequent band trips to Eastern Europe, had been having an affair with a woman from Kazakhstan. Apparently it wasn't just Jewish culture that he was attempting to reintroduce to the former Soviet Union. So Wex, always the gentleman, who had known that my boyfriend had been playing away on me for 2.5 years of our 3-year relationship, also knew, even though he had very strong feelings for me, that it was none of his business. So he was waiting for a decent period of time to elapse between Klezmer Boy dumping me and declaring his intentions. I couldn't wait that long, so I bought a bottle of Chateau Neuf and drunk dialed him. We were on the phone for 6 hours. I flew to Toronto 10 days later. We were engaged within 36 hours, and we got married 5 months after that phone call. And that was 9 years ago. It's been a British invasion for Wex and Jewish immersion for me. I learned to keep a kosher kitchen and to shop for Passover without having an embolism. And Wex translated George Formby's Leaning on a Lamppost into Yiddish. Wex introduced me to smoked meat, and I made him Yorkshire pudding. And I considered the cultural exchange complete a couple of years ago when he was invited to the London Jewish Book Fair as the keynote speaker. And I drove him all around the UK to various events, which culminated in a speaking engagement at a synagogue in Manchester, a brand new, beautiful, modern Orthodox synagogue in Chorlton. And the president of the shul, he gave us tea and chocolate hobnobs before the event. And he said to us ever so proudly, he was like, so the synagogue was opened by Prince Charles, and it cost £2 million, and we have over 100 families in our membership. And then he went off to do the sound check, and my husband leans over to me and he goes, It's like being in Coronation Street. But everyone's Jewish. I first saw my husband in the bar at the Cherry Hill Hilton in New Jersey. That was 12 years ago. On paper, our relationship looks ridiculous, but in real life, it's a mechaya. And Brian, do you know what mechaya means? Bad Jew. Bad new Jew. It means delight. And that's my story. Thank you.